Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me. My email is still tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It is still in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Email me. I am still tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we're discussing an original from one of the originals of the independent horology movement, made in France and designed by architect turned watch designer Alain Silberstein. This is the Krono Bauhaus, a 99-piece limited edition in stainless steel. It comes from a man whose designer value has never been higher than it is right now. His pioneering brand built watches under his own name from 1987 to 2012, but in the last decade, he's worked with every who's who of the modern watch industry, right up to MB&F, to trade on the enormous value of his pioneering Bauhaus-influenced style. And this watch is not influenced by Silberstein, it is from his own hand. Every element, feature, and facet designed by the genius from France. Now, it's a very silly watch. I'm not going to lie to you. If you take your watches too seriously, this is not for you. The watch features a combination of primary colors and fundamental shapes. There's, yes, a Bauhaus element to it, but I would also say this is not the stolid, sober, Teutonic Bauhaus of Walter Gropius and Mies van der Rohe. This includes elements of De Stijl, maybe even a little bit of Dada in the silliness of it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about the dimensions. It's quirky in the way it wears. 40 millimeters in diameter in steel. It's 15.7 millimeters thick, but it's actually really short from lug to lug across the wrist. Taking a quick look, you can see 42.1 millimeters from lug to lug, one of the shortest lug to lug spans I've ever seen on a 40 millimeter watch. Now, this one has a very rare bracelet, a factory bracelet. These are impossible to find. They're hard to find even attached to a watch. They're impossible to find as accessories. The end link to end link dimension across the wrist here is 48.2 millimeters. That's the total distance across the wrist. I'll throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters circumference. Again, before there was Franck Muller, Roger Dubuis, F.P. Journe, Carrie Voudelaine, and all these guys working under their own names. Alain Silberstein was at Basel in 1987. And you could see he had a very firm sense of direction. Watches that were easy to wear and high impact. The timepiece on my wrist of 16 centimeters circumference wears beautiful. Looking over the top, which makes the watch look broadest, you can see the lugs are still nowhere near the edge of my wrist. Taking it down the barrel look, you can see once again those lugs are nowhere near overhanging. The watch is sheer, although it's not super thick. It's not going to clear the tightest of dress cuffs, but you should be okay with a sports jacket. I could recommend this watch on the bracelet for wrists as small as 14 centimeters circumference. Put it on a strap, and now we're talking maybe 13.5. Again, this bracelet, the only example I've ever seen. This is a factory Alain Silberstein bracelet. You can see the French touch because these watches were designed and made in France, the company logo, and then the drilled out race car inspired motif that's also used on the reverse of the watch. It's a 5-link design. You can see on the underside that there are plentiful gaps to avoid pinching skin, pulling hair, or trapping wrist heat. This is a sports watch, well-loomed, automatic, and 100 meters water resistant. We have little strap tool holes in the edges of those stubby lugs, so if you want to pop the strap off, you can use your strap tool to do so. Look at how the edge of the bracelet is integrated into a recess in the flank of the case to create a fully integrated look with no daylight between the two components, but also to still allow a full range of movement for the bracelet and excellent ergonomics. We have a fold-out dive style extension, which I did not expect, but it's useful if you're ever using this watch with a dive suit or just a thick winter coat or sweater. There are 3 pairs of divots drilled into the clasp, so you can use those and your strap tool to change the anchoring point of the bracelet. And then we have a thick gauge steel single swing arm deployant and that clamshell to lock it and hold it in place. Taking a look in profile, you can see the idea of using fundamental colors, primary and primary shapes. So we have yellow, red, and blue. We have circle, triangle, and square. Now, this is start-stop chronograph. This is reset chronograph. This is for used if you want to wind or set the watch. So this is for use winding and setting the watch. And because they understand that this could be a little bit of a chore to operate, a little notch is inserted for your finger so you can more easily draw the crown out for winding and setting. So it's a very thoughtfully designed watch, right down to the tiniest details. The case is monoblock, so you can see it's all polished steel, but what you won't see is a separate bezel. The case and the bezel are all one piece, so everything loads through the case back. This creates a super sleek and seamless aesthetic up top, and allows Silberstein to use a super slim bezel that almost disappears when viewing the watch from the front. You can see it's almost just like a silver halo. We have some silly elements, shapes and colors on the dial, but to his credit, Silberstein did not force us to choose between aesthetics and legibility, as the colors actually assist in distinguishing the hands against the black dial base, which is matte black. We have a flange outboard for reading seconds and minutes, as well as chronograph seconds. We have a small seconds or running seconds that always operates unless the hacking seconds function is operated. We have a day and a date, and there is a double quick set system for independently setting those. What appears like it might be a moon phase is actually a 24-hour display. So you can see right now, am I looking at 7 o'clock in the evening or 7 o'clock in the morning? And you can see because this little hand is past 1800, 6 at night, we are in fact looking at 7 o'clock in the evening. There's a lot of metallized elements on the dial, including the numerals, the indices, the crosshair for the 24-hour display, and Alain Silberstein's signature. Take a closer look, and what you'll find is a system of solid block lume, where the actual luminescent indices are solid three-dimensional blocks of luminescence. Now, Silberstein was doing this in the 90s when no one else was, and it still feels very fresh today because we've seen a lot of companies following in the footsteps, turning three-dimensional lume structures into features of their dials. And this is a later example of the Krono Bauhaus, meaning that it actually has a luminova dial, which means in addition to the cool three-dimensional effects of solid block lume, you get a bright glow that lasts all night. The earlier versions of the watches from the early to mid-90s, those would have featured tritium. This one is a native luminova dial. Inside this French-made watch is a Swiss-made movement. As you can see, it has been heavily modified aesthetically, but it's a Lemania 5100. The 5100 is unusual in that it is a cam chronograph, but it's one of the few cam chronographs I can think of that also features a vertical clutch. Now, there are some modular cam chronographs that work that way, but this is an integrated automatic chronograph caliber, so when I start it up, there's no stagger or jump to the seconds hand, no extraneous motion, and if I want to leave it running, there's no additional wear and tear on the mechanism. A lot of old Lemania chronographs use a very jerky style of lateral clutch. This use of a vertical clutch is wonderfully seamless and feels very modern. It's an automatic winding movement. It does have a 48-hour power reserve. It has a 4 hertz beat rate. It was delivered in what I believe to be either top or chronometer quality. I can see that from the quality of the hairspring and the balance used. And you can see that different elements have been applied to this case back to make it aesthetically more interesting. It's not high horology finish, but the combination of shapes, colors, including on plastic components, and the drill outs animate the movement, even if they don't make it feel particularly luxurious. And again, 4 hertz beat rate, double quick set date, hacking seconds, a very high grade in-house adjusted version of the 5100 in a watch that can only be described as one of the coolest and most original efforts of its era. Alain Silberstein actually has an arrangement with a watchmaker who does the service on these. So if you reach out to Alain today, these are still very serviceable. If you love it, reach out to me. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.